I received a frantic voicemail from my sister Sarah begging me to come to our father's deathbed, claiming the whole family desperately needed me after 10 years of silence. But what she doesn't know is that Gilbert Murphy died 6 months ago when I legally changed my name to David Chen and vanished without a trace. The man she's trying to reach built a multi-million-dollar tech company while my biological family pretended I never existed, sending birthday cards and Christmas gifts that were never even opened. Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment my family decided I was dead to them. It was August 15th, 2012, 3 days after my college graduation from University of Texas at Austin. I had just turned 22 and landed my dream job as a software developer at a growing tech startup called Innovate Tech. The salary was $45,000 a year, which felt like winning the lottery for a kid from a small construction family in Beaumont, Texas. My father, Harold Murphy, had built Murphy Construction from nothing, just like his father before him. 3 generations of Murphy men had poured concrete-framed houses and built this town one foundation at a time. The company logo was painted on the side of our pickup truck in faded green letters, and I grew up knowing that truck would be mine someday. But I never wanted it. Computer science fascinated me in ways that construction never could. While my younger brother Tommy learned to read blueprints, I taught myself programming languages. While my sister Sarah helped Mom Patricia with the business bookkeeping, I created websites for local businesses to earn college money. Technology felt like magic to me, and I was good at it naturally. The explosion happened at Sunday dinner right there at the kitchen table, where we had eaten together every week for 22 years. I announced my decision to take the Austin job instead of joining Murphy Construction. Dad's face turned the color of brick dust. "Ungrateful," he said, setting down his fork like it weighed 50 pounds. "Too good for honest work, is that it?" "It's not that, Dad. I just want to use my education." "What we paid for that education so you could help grow this business," Mom chimed in, her voice tight with disappointment. "Make it better with all that computer knowledge." Tommy, 19 and already working construction full-time, shook his head. "Always thought you were special, didn't you, Gilbert?" Sarah, 17 and usually my ally, stayed silent. The betrayal stung worse than the anger. I tried explaining. The tech industry was booming. I could make more money and maybe even help the family business later with modern systems and digital marketing. But every word I spoke seemed to dig the hole deeper. "You walk out that door to chase your fancy dreams, you're choosing strangers over family," Dad declared. "Don't expect us to be here when your computer games don't work out." I thought he was just angry. I thought they would calm down and be proud when I succeeded. I was wrong. The first missed call came in September. I phoned home on Mom's birthday, excited to tell them about my first successful app launch. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a cheerful message describing my promotion to senior developer and how I wanted to take them all out for a celebration dinner. They never called back. October brought my attempt at Halloween contact. I sent a care package filled with Mom's favorite chocolates and a funny card. The package returned to my Austin apartment 2 weeks later, marked "Returned to Sender" in Dad's handwriting. Thanksgiving was my first holiday alone. I called 17 times throughout the day, hoping someone would pick up and invite me home. Each ring felt like a tiny rejection echoing in my empty apartment. My girlfriend Lisa found me on the kitchen floor that evening, surrounded by takeout containers and empty beer bottles, sobbing like a child. She was completing her master's degree in social work at UT and understood family dysfunction better than most people our age. "Maybe they need time," she said, stroking my hair. "Some families struggle when kids change the expected path." Christmas brought fresh hope. I had been promoted again and received a substantial bonus. I spent nearly $3,000 on gifts, professional-grade tools, for Dad a new computer, for the business jewelry for Mom, truck accessories for Tommy, art supplies for Sarah. Each gift was chosen with careful thought and wrapped with expensive paper. Every single item returned unopened on January 3rd. I stared at the pile of returned packages in my living room and felt something crack inside my chest. This wasn't anger or disappointment anymore. This was calculated cruelty. Lisa suggested family counseling. I called Murphy Construction to propose it, and Dad answered on the first ring. "The Murphy family is just fine without counseling," he said. "Maybe you should worry about your own problems." The line went dead. Spring brought a different strategy. I wrote letters. Long, heartfelt letters explaining my feelings, sharing my successes, asking what I had done wrong. I included photos of my awards at work, newspaper clippings, about my innovative mobile apps, anything to prove I was still their son worth loving. Every letter returned unopened. By summer, I realized this was no longer about the job choice. Through social media stalking, I discovered Tommy had gotten engaged to his high school girlfriend, Jennifer. The engagement photos showed the whole family celebrating at a barbecue restaurant in Beaumont. Everyone was laughing and hugging, forming a perfect circle that had no space for me. They had not told me about the engagement. They had not invited me to the celebration. Browsing Jennifer's Facebook page, I found dozens of photos of family gatherings, birthday parties, and Sunday dinners. Life had continued without me, as if I had never existed. The twist that shattered my remaining hope came through a mutual family friend named Jackson, who attended my high school. He messaged me on Facebook in late July. "Hey, Gilbert saw your success story in the Austin Business Journal. Congrats on the app company acquisition. Your family must be so proud." My heart stopped. "What did they say?" "Well, that's weird." "I mentioned it to your dad at the hardware store, and he just stared at me like I was crazy. Said he didn't know what I was talking about. Acted like he had no idea you were doing well." The family knew about my success. Local newspapers had covered my company's $2 million acquisition by a larger tech firm. I was featured as a local boy makes good success story that had reached Beaumont media outlets. They knew I had succeeded beyond their wildest construction business dreams. And they still wanted nothing to do with me. The knowledge that they were deliberately ignoring my success changed everything. This wasn't about disappointment or wounded pride anymore. This was active rejection of who I had become. And it made me desperate to prove my worth in ways that now seem embarrassing. I started sending increasingly expensive gifts. When the $10,000 check for new construction equipment returned untouched, I sent $15,000 in cash through certified mail. When Dad returned the cash without opening the envelope, I bought a brand new Ford F-350 pickup truck and had it delivered to the construction site with a note, "For the business with love from your son." Tommy drove it back to the dealership that same afternoon. My app company grew exponentially throughout 2013. We developed 3 breakthrough applications that revolutionized mobile banking security, and I became the face of Austin's emerging tech scene. Forbes magazine featured me in their 30 Under 30 list. The governor of Texas presented me with an innovation award at the state capitol. I sent copies of every article, every award certificate, every recognition to Beaumont, all returned unopened. Lisa watched my monthly emotional breakdowns with growing concern. Every returned package, every ignored call, every failed attempt to reconnect sent me spiraling into depression that lasted for days. I would research new strategies on family estrangement, read psychology articles about healing, broken relationships, and design elaborate plans to win them back. "You're becoming obsessed," Lisa said one evening after finding me crying over another returned gift. "This isn't healthy, Gilbert. You're successful, loved, and building an incredible life. Why do you need approval from people who treat you this way?" But I couldn't explain the hollow ache that consumed me. Every achievement felt empty without family to share it. Every milestone celebration felt like performing for strangers. Success without family love seemed pointless, no matter how much money I made or recognition I received. The fall of 2013 brought a new level of rejection that I never saw coming. My grandmother, Ruth Murphy. Dad's mother, who lived in a nursing home, had been the only family member who occasionally answered my calls. She was 91 years old and battling dementia, but she still remembered me with warmth. When Grandma Ruth passed away on November 10th, I learned about her death through the online obituary 3 days after the funeral. They had buried my grandmother without telling me. Ichaskas, I drove to Beaumont, immediately arriving at Sunset Hills Cemetery just as the groundskeepers finished covering her grave with fresh sod. Standing alone at the graveside, I felt more isolated than ever before in my life. But the real shock came when I attended the memorial service at Murphy Family Church the following Sunday. I slipped in quietly during the opening hymn and sat in the back pew wearing my best suit and hoping to blend in until I could approach my parents afterward. The moment Dad spotted me, his face hardened into granite. He whispered something to Mom, who turned to stare at me with undisguised hostility. Tommy and Sarah both saw me and immediately looked away as if I were a stranger who had wandered into the wrong service. When other relatives approached my pew to say hello, my parents actively intercepted them, steering conversations away from me. Uncle Marcus started walking toward me with a smile, but Dad grabbed his arm and pointed him toward the opposite side of the sanctuary. The most devastating moment came when Aunt Margaret, Grandma Ruth's sister, sat down next to me during the closing prayer. She was 87 years old with snow-white hair and had always been my favorite relative. "Your grandmother asked about you every single day until she died," Aunt Margaret whispered. "She kept asking why you never visited her anymore." My throat closed completely. They never told me she was sick. Aunt Margaret studied my face with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "Gilbert, honey, your parents have been telling everyone you abandoned the family. They say you got too big for your britches and decided you were too good for small-town people." The words hit me like physical blows. "That's not true. I've been calling and writing for over a year." "I know it's not true," Aunt Margaret said firmly. "I've been watching this family for 87 years, and I've seen what your parents do when they feel threatened. Your success makes them feel small, so they're rewriting history to make you the villain." As the service ended and people filed out, I watched my family form receiving line near the door to accept condolences. They positioned themselves so that anyone wanting to speak with them would have their backs to my pew. Every few minutes, Dad would glance over to make sure I was still isolated. When I finally approached them, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. "Dad, I'm sorry for your loss," I said quietly. "Grandma Ruth was special." Harold Murphy looked right through me, as if I were invisible. Mom stepped closer to Dad and turned her shoulder toward me. Tommy and Sarah both found sudden fascination with the carpet patterns. "Excuse me," Dad said to the family friend standing behind me. "We need to speak privately." He guided the friend away from me and began an animated conversation about construction projects, effectively dismissing me without a word. I stood there for 15 minutes surrounded by relatives and family friends who had known me since childhood, feeling completely alone. People who used to hug me and ask about school now avoided eye contact and hurried past my space. Aunt Margaret appeared at my elbow one final time as I prepared to leave. "They've poisoned this whole community against you," she said sadly, "spreading lies about how you think you're better than everyone else. It's not right, Gilbert. You're a good boy, and you don't deserve this treatment." Driving back to Austin that evening, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done chasing people who had made it clear they wanted nothing to do with me. I was done begging for scraps of love from people who saw my success as a personal insult. I was done being Gilbert Murphy. The winter of 2013 became my season of discoveries that shattered every remaining illusion about my family's motivations. What I learned during those dark months changed not just my perspective, but my entire identity. The first revelation came through Jackson, my high school friend who had become my unwitting spy into Beaumont gossip. He called me on a December evening with information that stopped my breath entirely. "Gilbert, I need to tell you something and you're not going to like it. I was at Murphy Construction yesterday getting materials for my renovation project. Your dad was telling the supplier that business was struggling because his ungrateful son abandoned the family and refused to help expand the company. My hands started shaking. What exactly did he say? He claimed you promised to bring computer expertise to modernize the business, then betrayed them for selfish reasons. Said you took their investment in your education and threw it back in their faces. The lies were breathtaking in their completeness. I had never promised to join the business. They had never invested a penny in my education beyond basic child support obligations. I had earned scholarships and worked multiple part-time jobs to pay for college. But Jackson wasn't finished destroying my world. There's more, Gilbert. I heard similar stories at 3 different businesses around town. Your family is actively telling people you abandoned them. They're painting themselves as victims of your ambition. I spent that night staring at my laptop screen cursor, blinking in an empty email draft. What could I possibly say to defend myself against lies being spread by the people who should love me most? The second devastating discovery came through my own financial success. My app company had just landed a contract with major banks to provide security software, and the deal was worth $12 million over 3 years. Industry publications covered the story extensively, and I was invited to speak at conferences across Texas. The Beaumont Herald ran a front-page feature about my company's success, complete with photos and details about my local roots. The article mentioned Murphy Construction as my family's business and quoted my father about his pride in local entrepreneurship. I called Dad within minutes of seeing the article online. I saw the newspaper story. I said when he answered, "Maybe we could finally talk about working together." The silence stretched for 30 seconds before he spoke. "I don't know who this is, but you have the wrong number." He hung up on me. Harold Murphy had publicly accepted credit for raising a successful entrepreneur, while privately pretending I didn't exist. The hypocrisy was staggering, but it revealed something crucial about my family's pathology. They wanted the reflected glory of my success without the responsibility of actually loving me. Lisa found me that evening sitting on our apartment balcony staring at the Austin skyline and trying to process the enormity of their betrayal. "I keep thinking there must be some explanation," I told her. "Some reason why they would act this way toward their own child." Lisa sat beside me and took my hand. "Gilbert, I've been studying family systems in my graduate program. What you're describing sounds like scapegoating. When families have internal problems they can't face, they choose one member to blame for everything wrong in their lives. But I left for college. I didn't do anything to them." That's exactly why you're perfect for the role. You're not there to defend yourself, and your success highlights their failures. By making you the villain, they can avoid taking responsibility for their own choices. The third and most crushing revelation came in February when I hired a private investigator named Robert Hayes to conduct surveillance on my family. I needed to understand what was really happening in their lives and why they had chosen to destroy our relationship so completely. Robert's first report arrived on Valentine's Day, which felt appropriate given how thoroughly it broke my heart. Murphy Construction was failing catastrophically. They had lost 3 major contracts due to outdated equipment and poor project management. The company owed nearly $200,000 to suppliers and had been placed on credit hold by multiple vendors. Harold was drinking heavily and had been arrested twice for public intoxication. Patricia was working double shifts at a local diner to keep the family financially afloat. But the most shocking detail was buried in the financial records Robert had obtained through public documents. 6 months earlier, Harold Murphy had applied for a small business loan to save the construction company. When the bank requested references and background information, they discovered that Harold's son was Gilbert Murphy, the successful tech entrepreneur featured in numerous business publications. The bank had approved a substantial loan based partly on my reputation and success. Harold had used my name and achievements to secure money for his business, while simultaneously telling everyone I had abandoned the family. I called the bank immediately and spoke with loan officer Diana Torres. Mr. Murphy, your father, mentioned you might be providing technical consulting for the business modernization, she said. The loan approval was influenced by your involvement and potential future investment. I have no involvement with Murphy Construction, I replied. My father and I haven't spoken in over a year. The phone went quiet. Sir, that's not what your father indicated on his application. He provided references who confirmed your ongoing family business relationship. Harold Murphy had committed loan fraud using my reputation. That evening, I sat in my Austin apartment with legal documents spread across my dining table. I could file criminal charges against my father for fraud. I could demand the bank call the loan immediately. I could destroy what remained of Murphy Construction with a single phone call to the right authorities. Instead, I made a different choice that would haunt me for months. I called Harold directly and laid out everything I knew about the loan fraud, the failing business, and the lies he had spread throughout Beaumont. I could send you to prison, I said quietly. But I'm going to make one final offer instead. I will invest $500,000 to save Murphy Construction. I will modernize your systems and help you compete in today's market. All I want in return is for us to be a family again. Harold Murphy's response to my generosity taught me everything I needed to know about his character. We don't need charity from traitors, he said. You made your choice when you decided you were too good for us. The next day, a certified letter arrived at my Austin apartment. Inside was the uncashed $500,000 check I had sent to save Murphy Construction, along with a handwritten note that still makes my stomach turn years later. The Murphy family takes care of its own. We don't need help from outsiders. My father had returned the money that could have saved his business rather than accept help from the son he had rejected. Standing in my apartment holding that returned check, I felt the last piece of my heart break completely. There was no love left to salvage. There was no family relationship to repair. There was only the painful truth that some people would rather destroy themselves than admit they were wrong. That night, I began planning my disappearance. Spring of 2014 brought my final attempt to reconnect with my family, an effort so elaborate and desperate that I'm still embarrassed by its scope. But sometimes you have to try everything before you can accept that nothing will work. My plan was simple in concept, but expensive in execution. I would buy a house in Beaumont, move back to my hometown, and force proximity to create opportunities for reconciliation. If they couldn't ignore me when I lived next door, maybe they would finally agree to heal our relationship. I found the perfect property through a real estate agent named Carol Henderson, a beautifully restored Victorian mansion on Magnolia Avenue, exactly 6 blocks from the Murphy family home where I'd grown up. The house had been featured in architectural magazines and cost $850,000, which represented about half my liquid net worth at the time. It's a magnificent property, Carol said during our first viewing. Built in 1895 by the railroad baron who founded this part of town, completely modernized while maintaining all the historical charm. The house was everything I had dreamed of owning: wraparound porches, original hardwood floors, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a modern kitchen that would make Lisa weep with joy. The master bedroom overlooked a garden filled with magnolia trees and antique roses. But the property's true value wasn't architectural. From the front porch swing, I could see the Murphy Construction truck parked in my parents' driveway every evening. I would be close enough to wave hello. When they returned from work, close enough to invite them for coffee on Sunday mornings, close enough to slowly rebuild what we had lost. I made an all-cash offer the same day and closed within 2 weeks. Lisa was less enthusiastic about our new proximity to my family. "Gilbert, this feels like stalking," she said as we packed our Austin apartment. "You're spending nearly $1 million to force contact with people who have made their feelings clear." "It's not stalking. It's persistence. Some families need time and space, but others need unavoidable proof that love doesn't quit." Lisa packed our books in worried silence. The moving process took 3 weeks. and I planned every detail to maximize positive impact. I hired the most expensive moving company in Houston to ensure our belongings arrived in pristine condition. I ordered custom landscaping to make the property even more beautiful. I installed a sound system that would allow me to play music during our first barbecue gathering. Most importantly, I arranged for the move to coincide with Christmas week, hoping the holiday spirit would soften hearts and create natural opportunities for reconciliation. December 23rd became the day I revealed my presents to my family. I spent the morning arranging elaborate Christmas gifts on my new front porch, a complete set of professional-grade construction tools, for Data Deluxe computer system for Mom to modernize the business bookkeeping premium truck accessories for Tommy, and art supplies worth $3,000 for Sarah, who had always dreamed of attending design school. Each gift included a handwritten note explaining my love and my desire to help them achieve their dreams. At exactly 9 in the morning, I knocked on the front door of my childhood home, wearing a navy blue suit and carrying a bottle of champagne to celebrate our reunion. Dad opened the door in his bathrobe coffee mug in hand, and his face went completely white. "Gilbert, what are you doing here?" "I moved back to Beaumont," I said, gesturing toward my beautiful Victorian mansion visible through their front windows. "I bought the Henderson place so we could be neighbors. I have Christmas gifts for everyone, and I hoped we could finally talk." Harold Murphy stepped onto the front porch and closed the door behind him, physically blocking my view of the family I could hear moving around inside. "You can't just show up here and expect everything to be forgiven," he said. "You made your choice 3 years ago." "Dad, I never chose anything except a career. I've been trying to reconnect with you for 3 years. I've sent letters, gifts, money to help the business. I just want to be your son again. You want to be our son? Then you should have acted like our son instead of chasing money and fame." The front door opened behind Dad, and Mom appeared wearing the wounded expression she had perfected over the past 3 years. "Gilbert, you can't keep doing this to us," she said. "Every time we start healing from your abandonment, you show up and tear open the wounds again." The psychological reversal was breathtaking. They had redefined my attempts at connection as abuse my gifts, as attacks my love, as selfishness. "Mom, I haven't abandoned anyone. I've been begging you to let me come home for 3 years. Coming home means more than visiting Gilbert. It means choosing family over your own ambition." Tommy and Sarah appeared behind our parents, forming a united wall of rejection on the front porch. Tommy was wearing a Murphy Construction t-shirt and looked like he had aged 5 years since I had last seen him. "Why are you here, Gilbert?" Tommy asked. "What do you really want from us?" "I want to be your brother again. I want to eat Sunday dinner together and help Dad with the business and watch Sarah graduate from art school and celebrate your wedding." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and for one hopeful moment, I thought she might break ranks and hug me. Instead, she wiped her eyes and stepped closer to Dad. "It's too late for that," she said softly. "Too much has happened." "What has happened? I left for college and got a job. That's what children do. That's normal." The conversation continued for 20 more minutes, becoming more circular and painful with each exchange. They insisted I had abandoned them. I insisted I had tried to stay connected. They claimed my success proved I thought I was better than them. I claimed my success was something they could be proud of. Nothing I said penetrated their narrative of victimhood. Finally, Dad delivered the ultimatum that ended my hope forever. "Gilbert, if you want to be part of this family again, you need to prove your commitment. Sell that expensive house, quit your fancy job, and come work for Murphy Construction. Show us that family matters more than money." The demand was insane. They wanted me to destroy my life to prove my love for people who had rejected me for 3 years. But I was desperate enough to consider it. What if I kept my business but also helped modernize Murphy Construction? What if I split my time between Austin and Beaumont? "All or nothing," Dad said firmly. "Family first or no family at all." I looked at 4 people I had loved my entire life, and realized they were asking me to commit emotional suicide to earn their approval. "I need some time to think about this," I said finally. Mom stepped forward and touched my arm gently, the first physical contact we had shared in 3 years. "Gilbert, honey, we love you. But love requires sacrifice. If you really want to come home, you know what you need to do." I walked back to my beautiful Victorian mansion and sat on the front porch swing staring at the house where I'd grown up. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like progress was possible. They had given me clear terms for reconciliation. All I had to do was sacrifice everything I had worked for to prove my worthiness. Lisa found me there 6 hours later, still sitting in the same position. "What did they say?" she asked. I explained their ultimatum, watching her face change from concern to horror. "Gilbert, please tell me you're not considering this." "I don't know what else to do, Lisa. They're my family." "No," she said firmly. "Family doesn't demand you destroy yourself to prove your love. What they're asking is abusive." But I was too deep in the dysfunction to recognize the truth. Christmas Eve brought my decision to accept their terms. I would sell my company, move to Beaumont permanently, and join Murphy Construction as their technology specialist. I would prove my love by sacrificing my identity. I called Dad at 7 in the morning on Christmas Day to announce my choice. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll sell everything and come home." The phone went quiet for so long I thought the call had disconnected. "Dad, are you there?" "Gilbert," he said slowly, "I need to tell you something. Your mother and I talked all night and we realized something important." My heart started racing with anticipation. "We realized that if you were really committed to family, you would have made this choice 3 years ago without us having to ask. The fact that it took an ultimatum proves you're still not ready to put family first." The words hit me like a physical assault. "But you said all or nothing. You said this was what I needed to do." "Son, you can't negotiate your way back into a family. Either you belong here or you don't. Either you choose us willingly or you don't choose us at all." "Dad, please, I'm trying to do exactly what you asked." "What I asked was for you to be our son. What you're offering is a business transaction." The call ended with Dad hanging up on me for the final time. I sat in my empty Victorian mansion on Christmas Day, surrounded by unopened gifts I had bought for people who would never accept them, and finally understood the truth that had taken me 3 years to recognize. Nothing I did would ever be enough. Nothing I sacrificed would ever prove my worth. Nothing I achieved would ever make them proud. They didn't want me back. They wanted me to suffer. They wanted me to fail. They wanted me to prove that leaving them had been a mistake, even if it meant destroying my life to provide that proof. At exactly 3 in the afternoon on Christmas Day, I called the Beaumont Police Department and reported a disturbance at my address. When Officer Martinez arrived, I was loading my car with the few possessions I couldn't live without. "Sir, we received a call about suspicious activity at this address." "I called you," I said. "I want to report that I'm about to disappear completely, and when my family comes looking for me in a few years, I want you to have a record that I left voluntarily." Officer Martinez looked confused but took my statement seriously. "Are you in danger, sir? Are you being threatened?" "No," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. "I'm just done being someone I'm not for people who will never love me anyway." 3 hours later, I was driving toward Austin with no intention of ever returning to Beaumont again. The last thing I saw in my rearview mirror was the Victorian mansion I had bought to win back my family's love. I never went inside it again. The first step in erasing Gilbert Murphy from existence was surprisingly simple. I drove to the Travis County Courthouse in Austin and filed a legal name change petition on January the 2nd, 2015. The process required a background check, a hearing with a judge, and publication in a local newspaper for 30 days to allow public objections. Nobody objected. On February 15th, Gilbert Murphy officially died, and David Chen was born. Lisa supported my decision to take her surname partly because she understood my need for complete separation from my toxic family, and partly because we had been discussing marriage for 2 years. The name change accelerated our timeline, and we held a small wedding ceremony in March with just her parents and our closest friends attending. "You're not running away," Lisa assured me during our honeymoon in Costa Rica. "You're running towards something better." She was right, though it took me several months to believe her. The psychological transformation from Gilbert to David required more effort than the legal paperwork. Gilbert Murphy had been wounded, desperate, and defined by his family's rejection. David Chen would be confident, successful, and surrounded by people who chose to love him. I started by completely changing my appearance. Gilbert had worn conservative business suits and kept his hair short to look professional and approachable. David grew a beard, started wearing designer clothes that reflected his actual wealth, and hired a personal trainer to build the kind of confidence that comes from feeling strong in your own body. The physical changes were dramatic, but the geographical change was even more important. Lisa and I moved to San Francisco in April, where I used my reputation and connections to launch Chen Technologies, a cybersecurity firm specializing in artificial intelligence applications. The Bay Area tech scene was exactly what I needed: competitive, innovative, and completely focused on merit rather than family connections. Within 6 months, Chen Technologies had signed contracts with 3 major corporations and hired 12 employees. Within a year, we were being courted by venture capital firms offering investment deals that would have sounded fictional when I was Gilbert Murphy struggling for his family's approval in Beaumont. The success came easily because I was no longer distracted by emotional drama. Every morning, I woke up excited to build something meaningful with people who respected my abilities. Every evening, I returned home to a wife who celebrated my achievements instead of resenting them. But the most healing aspect of my new life was Lisa's family. Margaret Chen, Lisa's mother, was a retired school administrator who embraced me immediately and completely. During our first Sunday dinner together, she asked detailed questions about my work, praised my accomplishments, and told embarrassing stories about Lisa's childhood that made me feel included in their family history. "David," she said as we cleared the dinner dishes, "Lisa told us about your family situation. I want you to know that you have a place here for as long as you want it." Robert Chen, Lisa's father, was a mechanical engineer who had immigrated from Taiwan in the 1970s. He understood the courage required to build a new identity in a foreign place, though my situation was emotional rather than geographical. "Family is not just blood," he told me during one of our long conversations about engineering and technology. "Family is people who help you become your best self." Lisa's younger sister Amy completed my new family structure. She was finishing her residency at UCSF Medical Center and treated me like the brother she had never had. Amy included me in her group of medical professionals, invited Lisa and me to hospital social events, and never once made me feel like an outsider trying to earn my place. The contrast between the Chen family's immediate acceptance and the Murphy family's years of rejection was stark. Margaret Chen called me every Friday to check on my week and share local gossip. Robert Chen asked for my advice on technology purchases and business decisions. Amy texted me funny medical memes and invited us to her softball games. They treated me like family from day one, with no probationary period and no conditions. But the most dramatic change in my new life was professional. As David Chen, I was free to pursue ambitious projects without the emotional baggage that had limited Gilbert Murphy's vision. In late 2015, I developed an artificial intelligence system for predicting cybersecurity threats that was unlike anything else in the market. The software could analyze millions of data points in real time and identify potential attacks before they occurred. The Department of Homeland Security purchased licenses for the software in March of 2016. Facebook signed a contract worth $12 million 6 months later. By the end of 2016, Chen Technologies was valued at $50 million and employed 67 people. The success was intoxicating. But it was also validation that my family's rejection had been their loss, not mine. Forbes magazine featured me on their cover in January of 2017 with the headline, "The Cybersecurity Genius You've Never Heard of." The article described my rapid rise in Silicon Valley and credited my innovative approach to threat detection with revolutionizing the industry. For the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely proud of my accomplishments, without any desire to share that pride with people who had rejected me. But the most important development during my transformation was the discovery that I was capable of being a father. Lisa's daughter from her previous marriage, Sophia, was 8 years old when Lisa and I got married. Sophia's biological father had abandoned them when she was 2 years old, leaving Lisa to raise her alone while completing graduate school. "She doesn't have to call you Dad," Lisa said when we first discussed my role in Sophia's life. "But I hope you'll want to be a father figure for her." Sophia was brilliant, funny, and completely unimpressed by my wealth or professional success. She cared that I showed up to her soccer games, helped with homework, and built elaborate pillow forts in our living room on rainy weekends. "David, can you teach me about computers?" she asked one evening while I was working on my laptop. "Sure. What do you want to know?" "I want to make video games, but I don't know how to start." That conversation led to weekly programming lessons that became the highlight of both our weeks. Sophia had a natural aptitude for logical thinking and creative problem solving that reminded me of my own childhood fascination with technology. By 2017, Sophia was calling me Dad without any prompting from Lisa, and I was officially adopting her as my daughter. The adoption paperwork required background checks that revealed an interesting detail: there were no legal connections between David Chen and Gilbert Murphy. As far as government records were concerned, Gilbert Murphy had simply vanished from all databases when he failed to renew his driver's license, update his voter registration, or file tax returns under that name. For all practical purposes, Gilbert Murphy no longer existed. The realization should have been disturbing, but instead it felt liberating. I had successfully created a new identity surrounded by people who loved me unconditionally. I had built a business that reflected my values and abilities. I had become the father that Sophia deserved, and the husband that Lisa had always wanted. I had erased the rejected son and replaced him with the successful man I was meant to be. But the universe has a way of reminding you that some connections can never be completely severed, no matter how much distance you create. The reminder came through a private investigator named Jennifer Walsh, who appeared at my office in February of 2018. "Mr. Chen, I'm looking for information about Gilbert Murphy. I believe you might know him." My assistant had announced her as a potential client interested in our cybersecurity services, so I was completely unprepared for the conversation. "I don't know anyone by that name," I said carefully. Jennifer opened a file folder and placed several photographs on my desk. Images of me from my Austin days newspaper clippings about my early app development success, and copies of legal documents that proved David Chen and Gilbert Murphy were the same person. "Mr. Chen, I've been hired to locate Gilbert Murphy by his family. They're hoping to reconnect with him." My hands started shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "Who hired you?" "His sister, Sarah Murphy. She says the family made mistakes and wants to apologize." The irony was perfect. After 4 years of complete silence, they had finally decided to look for me. But the person they were looking for no longer existed. "How much do you know about the Murphy family situation?" I asked. Jennifer consulted her notes. "According to Sarah Murphy, there was a misunderstanding several years ago that led to her brother leaving Texas. The family has regretted the estrangement and wants to make things right." A misunderstanding. 4 years of deliberate rejection returned gifts, ignored calls, and emotional abuse had been reduced to a misunderstanding. What exactly does the family want? "They want Gilbert to come home. They say they need him." The choice of words was telling. They needed me now, which meant something had changed in their circumstances. "Ms. Walsh, I can't help you locate Gilbert Murphy, but I can tell you this. If a family spends years Rejecting someone, they forfeit the right to decide when reconciliation happens. Maybe Gilbert doesn't want to be found. Jennifer left her contact information and asked me to call if I remembered anything that might help locate Gilbert Murphy. I threw her business card in the trash as soon as she left my office. But her visit had planted a seed of curiosity that grew stronger over the following weeks. What had happened in Beaumont that made my family suddenly desperate to find me? What did they need that had motivated them to hire a private investigator? In March, I hired my own investigator to research the current status of the Murphy family. What I learned explained everything about their sudden interest in reconnecting with their abandoned son. Harold Murphy had suffered a massive heart attack in December of 2017. Murphy Construction had collapsed completely, leaving the family bankrupt and facing foreclosure on their home. Patricia Murphy was working 3 part-time jobs to pay Harold's medical bills, but the debt was overwhelming. Tommy's marriage had ended in divorce, leaving him with substantial child support obligations he couldn't meet on his construction worker's salary. Sarah was struggling to support her own family while caring for their parents and had dropped out of nursing school due to financial constraints. The Murphy family was drowning financially, and they needed Gilbert Murphy's money to save themselves. They weren't looking for reconciliation. They were looking for a bailout. The discovery should have made me angry, but instead it filled me with something like pity. They had spent 4 years convincing themselves that they were better off without me, only to realize that my absence had cost them more than my presence ever could have. But David Chen was not responsible for fixing problems created by people who had rejected Gilbert Murphy. I instructed my investigator to stop monitoring the Murphy family and deleted all the reports from my files. Whatever was happening in Beaumont was no longer my concern. For 6 months, I successfully maintained that emotional distance. Then Sarah's voicemail arrived, and everything changed again. The message came through my old voicemail system, the one connected to Gilbert Murphy's phone number that I had kept active but never checked. I only discovered it because I was closing the last financial accounts connected to my former identity. Gilbert, this is Sarah. I know we haven't talked in years, and I know you have every right to hate us. But Dad is dying, and he's been asking for you every day. Please, please, call me back. We need you. Her voice was desperate in a way that cut through all my carefully constructed emotional barriers. This wasn't the confident young woman who had sided with our parents during our final confrontation. This was someone broken by circumstances that had spiraled beyond her control. I sat in my San Francisco office staring at the voicemail transcription on my phone screen and felt the first crack in the wall I had built around my past. Lisa found me there 3 hours later, still frozen with indecision. "What happened?" she asked, recognizing the expression I wore whenever anything reminded me of my former life. I played Sarah's message for her and watched her face change from concern to something harder to identify. "What are you thinking?" Lisa asked. "I'm thinking they don't deserve any response from me." But she sounds genuinely scared. Lisa sat down across from my desk and studied me with the clinical assessment skills she had developed as a social worker. "David, you've built an incredible life. You have a family that loves you, a business that's changing the world, and peace that took years to achieve. Why would you risk that for people who caused you so much pain?" The question was logical, but it missed something essential about healing from family trauma. Because maybe I need to see them one more time as David Chen instead of Gilbert Murphy. Maybe I need them to understand what they lost when they chose to reject me. Lisa's expression softened. That sounds like closure rather than reconciliation. She was right. I didn't want to rebuild relationships with my biological family. I wanted them to see exactly who I had become despite their rejection, and I wanted them to live with the knowledge of what their cruelty had cost them. It took me 2 weeks to make the decision to return to Beaumont. I hired a team of private investigators to provide detailed intelligence about the current state of the Murphy family before I made contact. What they discovered painted a picture of complete financial and emotional collapse that was both satisfying and heartbreaking. Harold Murphy, age 68, was in hospice care at home after suffering 3 heart attacks in 8 months. The medical bills had exhausted their insurance coverage and forced them to mortgage their house multiple times. He was expected to live less than 2 months. Patricia Murphy, age 65, was working as a night cleaner at a local office building, a diner waitress during lunch shifts, and a grocery store cashier on weekends. She was earning approximately $1,200 per month while trying to care for a dying husband and maintain a household. Tommy Murphy, age 32, had lost his job at a construction company due to drinking problems that developed after his divorce. He was living in his parents' basement and collecting unemployment benefits while fighting for visitation rights with his 2 children. Sarah Murphy, age 30, was married to a mechanic named Brandon and had 2 young children. She was working as a part-time receptionist at a dental office while caring for her parents in the evenings. The family was 3 months behind on mortgage payments and facing foreclosure. Murphy Construction had officially dissolved in October of 2017 with outstanding debts of nearly $400,000 to suppliers and subcontractors. The family's credit was destroyed, and they were being pursued by multiple collection agencies. Most devastating of all, the investigators discovered that the Murphy family had attempted to locate me as early as 2016 when Harold's health problems first became serious. They had contacted my old employer in Austin, searched public records, and even hired a cheaper private investigator who had failed to connect David Chen to Gilbert Murphy. They had been looking for me for 2 years before they found someone competent enough to trace my transformation. The timeline meant that Sarah's desperate voicemail was not their first attempt to reconnect. It was their last resort after every other option had been exhausted. Armed with complete intelligence about their situation, I flew to Houston on a Thursday morning in April and drove a rental car to Beaumont. I checked into the Marriott Hotel downtown and spent the evening planning my approach to the family that had rejected me. I decided to attend Harold's hospice care as David Chen, not Gilbert Murphy. The next morning, I dressed in my most expensive suit, drove to the Murphy family home, and knocked on the front door. Sarah answered, and her face went completely white. She was 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and looked like she had aged 15 years since our last encounter. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she was wearing scrubs that suggested she had just finished a shift at the dental office. "Gilbert," she whispered. "My name is David Chen," I said calmly. "I understand Harold Murphy is dying and has been asking for his son Gilbert. I'm here to tell you that Gilbert Murphy died several years ago, but David Chen might be willing to help." Sarah started crying immediately, a combination of relief and confusion that reminded me of the little sister I had once loved. "I don't understand. You are Gilbert. You're my brother." "Gilbert Murphy was your brother. He tried for 4 years to reconnect with this family and was rejected repeatedly. David Chen is a successful businessman who builds technology solutions and has no biological family." The conversation continued for 20 minutes on the front porch, with Sarah alternately begging me to come inside and trying to understand how I had changed so completely. Finally, I made my position clear. "Sarah, I will pay for Harold's medical care and funeral expenses. I will provide enough money to save the family home and help everyone get back on their feet. But I'm not doing this as your brother. I'm doing this as a stranger who feels sympathy for your situation. Gilbert, please. Dad knows he was wrong. He wants to apologize." "David," I corrected. "And Harold's apology is 4 years too late." I handed Sarah an envelope containing my lawyer's business card and instructions for establishing a trust fund that would cover all their expenses. "The money comes with one condition," I said. "None of you will attempt to contact me again after Harold's funeral. This is closure, not reconciliation." Sarah took the envelope with shaking hands. "Can I at least tell Dad that you're here? That his son came home?" I studied her face and saw genuine remorse mixed with desperate hope. "You can tell Harold that Gilbert Murphy found peace despite everything this family did to destroy him. You can tell him that Gilbert became more successful than he ever dreamed possible. And you can tell him that Gilbert's success happened because he learned to build relationships with people who actually knew how to love. Walking back to my rental car, I felt something I hadn't expected: satisfaction. Not the bitter satisfaction of revenge, but the clean satisfaction of justice. The Murphy family would survive their crisis because I chose to help them. But they would never again have the power to hurt me. Gilbert Murphy was finally free. The call came 3 weeks later while I was in a board meeting with potential investors for Chen Technologies. Sarah's number appeared on my phone, which I had programmed to forward to voicemail automatically. But this time I stepped out of the meeting to listen. "David, this is Sarah. Dad died this morning. The funeral is Saturday at 2 o'clock at First Baptist Church on Main Street. I know you said you wanted closure, and I think you should be there. Not as Gilbert, but as David. So you can see that your kindness meant something." The funeral was standing room only, which surprised me. I had expected a small gathering for a man whose business had failed and whose family had struggled for years. Instead, I walked into a church filled with people whose lives Harold Murphy had touched during his 68 years. I sat in the back row wearing a charcoal gray suit and observing the ceremony like the stranger I had chosen to become. The eulogy was delivered by Tommy, who had sobered up enough to speak coherently about his father's life and legacy. "Harold Murphy was a proud man," Tommy said from the pulpit. "Sometimes that pride cost him things he should have fought to keep. But he also built this community one foundation at a time, and he taught his children that family is the most important thing in the world." The irony of that last statement was almost amusing. Patricia spoke next, her voice weak but steady, as she thanked the community for their support during Harold's illness. "Harold's biggest regret was that our son Gilbert wasn't here to say goodbye," she said, looking directly at me without recognition. "He talked about Gilbert every day, hoping for one more chance to tell him how proud he was." Sarah was the final speaker, and her words changed everything I thought I understood about the past 4 years. "My father made mistakes that cost our family dearly," she said. "But in his final weeks, he did something that took more courage than I've ever seen. He told the truth about what really happened when Gilbert left home." I sat up straighter, suddenly focused on every word. "Dad was jealous of Gilbert's success," Sarah continued. "He was ashamed that his college-educated son had surpassed him so quickly, and he was terrified that Gilbert would look down on our simple life. Instead of celebrating Gilbert's achievements, Dad convinced himself that Gilbert's success was a rejection of everything our family represented." The congregation was completely silent. Dad spent 4 years believing that if he could make Gilbert fail, if he could force Gilbert to come home and join the family business, it would prove that blood was stronger than ambition. He thought rejection would teach Gilbert humility and bring him back to us. My hands started shaking. But Gilbert never came back. And in his final days, Dad realized that he had driven away the son who loved him most. He realized that Gilbert's success could have lifted our whole family if Dad had been mature enough to celebrate it instead of feeling threatened by it. Sarah's voice broke, but she continued. "Dad asked me to say this if Gilbert ever came home. I was wrong, and I'm sorry, and I'm proud of the man you became despite my failures as your father." I sat frozen in that church pew, tears streaming down my face, finally understanding the psychological complexity of what had happened to my family. Harold Murphy hadn't rejected me because he didn't love me. He had rejected me because he loved me too much to accept that I might not need him anymore. The insight didn't excuse his behavior, but it explained it in ways that allowed me to feel something other than anger toward him. After the service, I stood outside the church watching the Murphy family accept condolences from their community. Patricia looked fragile, but dignified. Tommy appeared sober and more mature than I remembered. Sarah moved between her children and her mother with quiet strength. They were broken people trying to rebuild their lives after years of poor decisions. But they were also my family, whether I acknowledged that connection or not. Margaret Chen Lisa's mother had told me once that forgiveness was not about excusing bad behavior. It was about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying someone else's mistakes. Standing outside that church, I realized I was ready to put down the burden I had carried for 4 years. I approached Sarah as the crowd began to disperse. "David," she said, surprised to see me. "I heard what you said about Harold's regrets." I told her, "I want you to know that I forgive him, not because what he did was acceptable, but because forgiveness is how I take back my power." Sarah hugged me tightly, and I let her. "Does this mean you might consider being Gilbert again?" "No," I said gently. "Gilbert Murphy died when your family rejected him. But David Chen might be willing to know his sister Sarah if she can accept him as the man he chose to become." Over the following months, Sarah and I rebuilt a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. She visited San Francisco twice and met Sophia, who adored having an aunt who treated her like a princess. I helped Sarah's family purchase a new home and supported her decision to return to nursing school. Tommy took longer to accept my transformation. His pride was as wounded as Harold's had been, and he struggled to relate to his successful brother without feeling diminished. But gradually, we found common ground in our shared love for his children, who needed an uncle who could provide opportunities their father couldn't afford. Patricia was the most challenging relationship to rebuild. She had spent so many years resenting my absence that my presence felt threatening to the narrative she had constructed. But slowly, patiently, we learned to appreciate each other as adults rather than as mother and abandoned son. The Murphy family never became the close, loving unit I had dreamed of as Gilbert, but they became something more valuable, real people with flaws and struggles who had learned to treat me with respect and gratitude. Most importantly, they became proof that I had succeeded not just professionally, but emotionally. I had transformed rejection into resilience, abandonment into achievement, and family dysfunction into personal strength. Chen Technologies went public in November of 2019, making me worth approximately $120 million. The IPO was covered extensively in business media, and several journalists mentioned my unusual background as a Texas small-town kid who had become a Silicon Valley icon. Lisa and I adopted 2 more children through the foster care system, building the kind of loving family that nurtures rather than diminishes its members. Sophia graduated valedictorian from her high school class and received a full scholarship to Stanford University, where she's studying computer science and following in my footsteps. My relationship with the Chen family deepened every year as I learned what healthy family dynamics actually look like. Margaret and Robert Chen became the grandparents Sophia had never had, and Amy became the aunt who taught her about strength and independence. But the most meaningful measure of my healing was the peace I felt when people asked about my family. For years, the question had triggered shame and pain. Now, it triggered gratitude. I have a family that chose to love me completely. I have children who see me as their hero. I have a wife who celebrates my successes and supports me through challenges. I have everything the Murphy family could have given me, and more, because I learned to find it somewhere else. The final lesson of my story is this: sometimes the greatest gift people can give you is showing you exactly who they are, so you can choose to build something better. My biological family's rejection forced me to discover my own strength, create my own identity, and find people who knew how to love without conditions. Their cruelty became my opportunity. Their rejection became my liberation. And that transformation was worth more than their acceptance ever could have been. If you're struggling with family relationships that drain rather than nourish you, remember that blood doesn't obligate you to accept abuse, and love doesn't require you to sacrifice your dreams for other people's comfort. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and build something better. Sometimes disappearing is the first step toward finding yourself. What would you do if your own family forgot about you for 10 years? Would you fight to win them back, or would you choose to build a new life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges. And don't forget to share this with someone who might need to hear that it's possible to heal from rejection and build the life you deserve. Thank you for listening, and remember that your worth is not determined by who chooses to love you, but by who you choose to become.